All right, so Mason, we're at the RC day 2. We saw some great games yesterday. We're going to see people today qualifying for the Pro Tour. Let's get into the schedule for today and break down what we're going to be looking at. All right, so broadcast schedule. We're going to be doing rounds 10 through 14 before the cut to top 8 today. And then the structure of the tournament today, we've got standard constructed, 5 rounds of Swiss for day 2. And then we're going to top 8, which is a single elimination bracket, modified play draw based on where people are seated. And for prizes of this tournament, it's looking pretty sweet.
A lot on the line.
A lot on the line. First place, $30,000. Second place, 15 grand. Cash out all the way to 64th. But that's not it. Top 2 qualifies for World Championship 30. Top 64 qualifies not only for the Pro Tour in Amsterdam, also qualifies for the RC in Washington. And the format today is standard. This is a 60-card constructed format. It's one-on-one. The set legality goes all the way back to Midnight Hunt. I think Standard's in a really great place right now. We've seen a lot of different decks making it to day 2. We've got a lot of different decks at the top right now. Let's take a look at the standings real quick. All right, and here are the standings from yesterday. Mason, I know you were doing some commentary last night. I know you saw some of these players. What are your thoughts on some of these people at the top?
Yeah, so in first place, we have Jack, our sole undefeated on the day. We saw him beat Pro Tour champion Alan Wu at the end of yesterday, playing his Gruul ramp deck. And spoilers, we are going to start with Jack today versus our number 2 seed, Adam Hernandez. You might know him as Yeoman5 from online. These two players are playing 2 exciting decks. We have Slogger and we have Ramp, but there's so many awesome decks being played here. You know, we saw Alan Wu, we mentioned earlier, a couple matches yesterday, playing the Teamer Analyst deck. We saw some of these other players like Jason Yee playing the Slogger deck that it created. There's just a bunch of awesome decks going on, and there's still a lot of Magic left to be played now. What we kind of know from the past RCs, and it's not official, is about 31 match points is where you're starting to feel pretty good at qualifying for the Pro Tour. Now, all of these players, they are doing so well. They're, very live for that, but also very live to make the top 8 and maybe get that Worlds invite as well. So these players have a lot left to play for and a lot of Magic left to play. Even if they start off getting 2 losses on today, they're still very live. So it's going to be high stakes Magic the rest of the day for these players.
Yeah, high stakes indeed. A lot on the line. Very exciting. We've got our top seed, Jack Doucette, like you said, the only undefeated player from yesterday, who I think we are going to have an interview with here in a second with our host, Tan and Grace. So let's go ahead and cut to that and see what Jack has to say.
Hey everybody, welcome back down to the feature match area, brought to you by Heavy Play. I'm Tan and Grace, I'm here with Jack Doucette. Jack, you're our lone 9-0 after day 1. It's got to feel good.
Yeah, it feels really great. Best results so far for me at an RC, so I'm really stoked.
Yeah, you know what I'm really stoked about? Your deck. Your deck is absolutely awesome. Everybody at home, if you've seen a little bit of it, you're going to see a little more of it today. I'm calling it like red-green surprise. I don't know what to call it. Do you have a good name for it that we can kind of like stamp onto it?
Yeah, no, like Gruul surprise, red green surprise. I think it's like a good name. Some people call it like red green calamity, Gruul ramp on Melee. Get on that. But yeah, whatever people want to call it. I like red green surprise, but yeah.
How about we just call it good?
I would agree.
Yeah, I thought it was a meme. I thought it was like a joke when I saw the thing on paper, but Calamity is a hell of a card, and you were telling me kind of why you chose this deck this weekend, and was it mostly off of vibes?
Yeah, I picked all of my decks kind of on vibes. That's how I prefer to play. Stats are good for some things, but they only go so far. Yeah, I just found it on a deck dump on Goldfish. Started playing it when I was looking for decks for this event, and the very first game I'm playing on Moto, and I just like turn force somebody with Calamity and Terror of the Peaks, and I'm just like, all right, I'm in.
So, something here is real. Like
yeah.
And so we were talking about this ahead of time. You're 9-0 here. I gotta know. You told me you've never qualified for the Pro Tour before. You're only a few wins away from that. Is that in the back of your head? Are you thinking about that today?
Yeah, certainly. I would love to queue for my first PT, but it's like you said, it's in the back of your head. I take things one round at a time. I'm 9-0. That's awesome. But what's there to celebrate? You know,
Good point.
I'm here for some prize money, some trophies, some glory, and PT, RC, Worlds. That's all. All comes with it.
Job's not done. Let's go ahead and win this thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Jack, best of luck the rest of the day. I'm rooting for you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Wow, what a winner's attitude from Jack there. Only person to go undefeated in day one, and already he's like, I'm here for more. I'm not done. I'm ready to win more. I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to go to Worlds, the PT. I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. And luckily, he is our feature match this round, so we're going to get to see it right away now.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and take a look at the deck list that we are going to see from Jack and his opponent, Yeoman. So here we have the Gruul ramp deck. Mason, what are your thoughts on this deck overall? I know it's kind of different than some of the other ones we've seen.
Yeah, so this is a deck very similar to what we saw top 8, I believe the Australian RC last weekend. And basically the idea behind this deck is you're trying to ramp into bigger creatures and then ideally do something like Smuggler Surprise to put in 2 giant creatures. But ultimately Calamity Galloping Inferno is going to make token copies of these huge creatures and we're going to kill our opponents. And with things like Terror of the Peaks, that actually creates a bunch of enter the battlefield triggers where we can shoot our opponent to death if they're at the right life total or shoot down their board. So this deck, kind of a traditional ramp deck, is kind of putting in big creatures, but also able to have those combo kills that kind of win out of nowhere. And against a lot of the format, there are some decks that are going to be a problem for Jack. Like Blue-White Control might be a bit of an issue, but he has some things for that, like Cavern of Souls. And if they don't have a strong way to kill him quickly, he will overpower them. So Jack's deck is a bit, of a roguish choice if you were to, look back 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it's looking to be very well positioned. Cards like Glimpse the Core, we talked about yesterday on coverage with how just powerful having a 2-mana ramp spell is. It just puts you 2 to 4, and Jack is really using that to its fullest today.
Yeah, really excited to see him pilot this deck. It was really cool yesterday getting to watch it. Let's take a look at Yeoman's deck here. All right, so he is on the Slogurk deck, which I know we've seen a lot of. There's a lot going on here, Mason. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so at its core, the Slogurk deck is kind of this like mid-rangey, grindy deck that has the ability to combo kill out of nowhere. We watched Jason Yee combo yesterday with it. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and Adam is playing a slightly different version of this that uses Vile Smasher in comparison to some other things. And that's one of the cool things about this deck is it has so many different slight modifications that you can make. It has access to all the colors, so you can do just about anything you want. But at its core, it's really using Rona Enti as a way to churn through its deck, and then uses Slogurk as this sort of inevitability in combination with the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty lands, so like Otawara, Takanuma, and things like that. We'll get into more of that as the match gets going, because I think they're ready for us to hop down.
All right, let's get into it. All right, here we go, getting into game 1. Looking at hands here. Looks like we have Yeoman on the play, dropping a Plaza of Heroes, and then passing over to Jack, who's just going to go Forest, go right back to Yeoman, who's going to drop down a Swamp, and there's Rona.
Rona is the thing that Adam wants on turn 2. This deck just gets out of control, and immediately Jack answers it.
Yeah, definitely a pivotal part of the engine that you just cannot leave unchecked.
Yeah, one of the things we didn't get to talk much about was how Relic of Legends produces a lot of mana. And yeah, you see Yeoman actually had the Rona plus NT, which is sort of this looting engine that just goes through a ton of extra cards. And while you don't get to keep them all for forever, it helps you assemble sort of your miscellaneous combo.
Yep, and it looks like that is going to be a Scrounger for Jack on turn 3.
Yeah, this card is kind of nice in this deck because it allows you to have a little bit of graveyard hate while also being, this backup mana accelerant for you. So Yeoman, who sometimes uses his graveyard to get a little incidental advantages, is now going to have a bit of a harder time. And Jack, with an open deck list, probably helped keep had this hand with that in mind. As we see, the Honest Rusty try to target it, but Jack's creature is summoning 6, so he can't use it. But on a future turn, that would have been a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Honest Rusty, great to have for Yeoman's deck. Very good at enabling some of those mana combos, getting the engine churning. Back to Jack now. We're going to have our land for turn and have a little bit of a think here. So it looks like we are exiling a card from the graveyard. And something big's coming down. Looks like it is going to be a terror.
Yeah, and this was the turn for Jack. Doesn't really have many 4-mana cards, but luckily had, the Scrap Gorger to jump up to 5. And Terror of the Peak is something we talked about before the match. This is just a good, strong dragon that Yeoman has some answers to. But if he doesn't answer it now, it's going to start shooting down Yeoman's miscellaneous pieces or start shooting Yeoman himself.
Right, it looks like we're going to attack in with the Honest Rusty, trigger the NT. Oh, and that is a go for the throat off of the NT trigger.
That is massive. Adam needed that to happen there. That way he could answer this Terror of the Peaks. He can do it before blocks if he wants to. Nothing like Aganjo in these builds of the deck, so you're not going to see any sort of like offer it, but...
Yep, and he is going to go ahead and do that. And there will be no blockers for Honest Rusty here.
Yeah, and remember, Terror of the Peaks has the original ward. It has spelled on it, spells your opponent cast that target this. They cost an additional 3 life to cast. So Yeoman is going to take 3.
And then we are going to see Vile Smasher come down for Yeoman.
Yeah, Vile Smasher, just sort of a miscellaneous creature in this deck. Eventually, it becomes part of a combo kill once we get a bunch more pieces assembled. We're pretty far away from that, so Jack doesn't need to really worry about that, but Adam gets to play it now, and, maybe Jack might overthink it, might try to kill this creature instead of something else, and he kind of just gets to develop it for free. It does look like Jack's casting Smuggler Surprise.
Yeah, it does. Which I think we saw 2 more terrors in his hand, if I'm not mistaken.
If he has 2 more terrors, Yeoman's not going to have a board.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, so Terror of the Peaks, they see each other entering the battlefield, and Terror of the Peaks says whenever a creature enters the battlefield, deal damage equal to its power or something. And so Terror of the Peaks gets to shoot down 2 of Yeoman's creatures. And a pretty massive swing there.
Yeah, it was looking really bad for Jack for a second there, but really showed us the power of this deck to just out of nowhere be able to turn the tide.
Yeah, and it's also a situation where, this is one of Jack's better combination of things to put into play, right? Jack definitely had a strong start, but also Jack just has a lot of things that would have been also good, right? Like Trumpeting Carnosaur would have been a really good hit as well. So this kind of shows Jack's deck is built with kind of this kind of huge swing play in mind, and when it happens, it's really hard for other decks to stabilize.
Right, and for Yeoman, we're going to see another Honest Rusty come down, pick up the NT. It's as if no creature was killed at all.
Yeah. Now, the real question is, will Yeoman just die in the air? Because there's 10 damage in the skies, and if we play any creature, the terrors are both going to trigger. And even if the terrors don't kill Yeoman, Adam is going to be on the back foot because, targeting the terrors costs 3 life. So they're going to be presenting near lethal on the next turn as well.
And looks like they are swinging in. No way to stop that damage. So going to go down to 7. And it looks like we are playing a bounce land here, picking up our land from last turn. And Yeoman's going to channel Takenuma at the steeply discounted cost of 1 black mana.
Yeah, and this is one of the big advantages of this 5-color Slogurk/Legends deck is that you just get to play these cards typically for 1 mana, and at that point, they're basically spells. Now, we are going to see Jack respond, and you see him taking a big think on it. He can remove the Honest Rusty, but once the Takenuma starts resolving, Jack would not have a chance to respond.
Right. And we're going to see land NT hit off the Takenuma. Not really what Adam wants to be seeing here, I don't think.
It's not exactly it for sure. Now, Adam is very close to having lethal. If he had just had a little bit more set up, the Vile Smasher does deal damage to an opponent whenever another creature enters the another outlaw specifically enters the battlefield. But we only have 6 on the board right now. NT will put us to 7. So Adam just a little short.
Yeah, and it looks like we are channeling Boseiju, targeting the Archway, and off the NT trigger there, we're going to see Titania.
And that is huge now. Titania not only has reach, but whenever a land hits the graveyard, you gain 2 life. So now Adam can put a blocker into play. Then we can attack their Inti, discard a land, gain a little bit of life, draw a new card, and then have a chump blocker. And now if Jack, draws any creature, we're probably dead, but we can't beat that anyways. And Adam can attack for 6-ish, put Jack on the back foot, and then maybe win this race out of nowhere.
Yeah, very, very big hit for sure, but still definitely anyone's game. There's a lot happening here for both players. Looks like doing a little bit of calculus here. This is a complicated deck.
Yeah, one of the really hard parts of this Lurgurk deck is situations like this from Adam, right? Adam did a great job of doing there, knowing like I need to hit something off the channeling from NT triggering from the discard to hit the right thing, and knowing like, okay, should I like be playing, with Titania in play, or should I be, playing it out after I get my loot? Like, what do I want to do here? As we are going to see the attack in.
Yeah, we're gonna see the attack in, the NT trigger, discarding the NT. You're gonna see a Plaza of Heroes as the card that we are able to play off of that.
Yeah. And then we have 2 lands we can play. We have the Titania. Jack is down to 5, so we're very close.
Oh, but it's going to be Relic of Legends, it seems.
That makes sense as to, why Adam played the turnout the way he did. Just knew he had access to a lot more mana. Maybe was trying to find some way to, go off, etc. if he hit the right cards. But does have a chump blocker now. Now, any creature for Jack probably wins the game.
Oh, but we are not seeing a creature, but we are seeing a surprise there.
Yeah, and I mean, Smuggler's Surprise, you can mill cards as part of the mode in order to put it in your hand. So if Jack was able to hit one of his smaller creatures like a Topiary Stomper, he would be able to win the game. But I think he has to hit a Topiary Stomper here. And, Yeoman last turn blowing up that Archid Airway, is actually massive because he got the trigger going. But also, that was a double land, right? We didn't talk much about it. It's the double colorless bounce land. And that actually put Jack down a mana, where if we had 1 more mana, we'd have a lot more outs on our mills to actually win the game.
Yeah, definitely a very tight position here. Jack certainly has outs. But I think the real question, Mason, is can he survive another turn from Adam?
Yeah, we could hold back and do some blocking, right? Like our Scrap Gorger can block the bigger creature, the Tear of the Peaks eat some stuff, and we'll probably go to about 2-ish. And Smuggler's Surprise is an instant, so it looks like that's what Jack's going to do. He's going to try and set up a, mill here, and that way I can kind of win with a bigger creature off the top, and Yeoman might want to play around some sort of removal spell here. So a lot of pressure on Adam to figure out exactly how to play this turn correctly.
Yeah, I think this is very well played from Jack here. As you mentioned, Smuggler Surprise is an instant. If Yeoman presents something that looks like lethal, we can always just cast it then and, throw our Hail Mary at that point. And if Yeoman can't get there, you get another turn, you get another look.
And you see Adam going in the tank like, what on earth? How do I get out of this? I have access to a lot of cards. I have a lot of different things I can do. Worth noting, Plaza of Heroes does exile when it goes to its ability, so it won't gain any life from Titania. We are going to see an attack, though.
Sure. And we're going to discard the relic there.
Now, Jack is able... I believe Adam has no cards in hand, so Jack just knows if this block is safe or not.
And it looks like we're blocking both the creatures. And casting our surprise before damage.
Yeah, and it looks like we're using surprise for the the least common modes of it, which are going to be the mill and we found the calamity. That's going to go to our hand. And then the other mode is creature with power 4 greater gain, hexproof and indestructible. So now those, terrors won't die. And I think Jack has the mana to cast that calamity.
which that should just do it, right?
Yeah, that should be lethal. I mean, Adam might have a card in hand that we can't see. It doesn't look that way from the body language. And I think Adam's just double checking. Yeah, there's no way I can
Yeah.
gain enough life to live. And game one goes to Jack.
Yeah, a very strong showing. I mean, both players played that so well, but we really saw why both of them are our first and second seed. Let's take a look at the deck list here. Mason, what do you think Jack is bringing in from this sideboard to deal with the Slowgurk deck?
Yeah, so cards like Pick Your Poison are really nice at stopping that amulet. We didn't see how like the Amulet of Vigor went with the Relic of Legends, excuse me. Very similar cards got me there. But no, Relic of Legends is a card that kind of can allow Adam to do some really powerful things. So Pick Your Poison is definitely going to come in, even though that's really the only target. Maybe Adam has some sideboard card for you. We're going to get there in a second and take a look. But for the most part, just getting the Relic of Legends is enough. Something like Tranquil Frillback can also be a thing that you can play to maybe block early and then also blow up that relic. It also can exile graveyards, which does come up a little bit. Slurgurk is something we haven't seen yet in this match, but can get the lands back. I could easily see that happening. I could also see Jack maybe bringing Archdruid's Charm. Once again, answers the relic and is also just a removal spell. You can have your creature get a little bigger and fight and search your deck for that creature. And we've seen from Jack's deck that if there's one big flaw is that you need kind of everything to be going, and the deck is really redundant, but having that extra bit of redundancy with an answer is going to be really big for Jack. So I'm excited to see how he wants to play game number 2 here.
Yeah, and let's take a quick look over at Adam's list. What do you think he wants to bring in to deal with this Gruul aggro?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of different ways that Adam can take this, right? You could bring in a couple duresses as a way to hit stuff like, Glimpse the Core and, Smuggler's Surprise. We saw in that game how, we didn't even have a glimpse and there's a lot of creatures. So duress could be a problem. So to that same kind of logic, you could bring in Dreams of Steel and Oil, a discard spell for creatures, and try and fight the deck on that angle. I think no matter what, I'd probably bring in the Dreams. The real question to me is, would I bring in the duresses or not? And how many? I could see having a couple of them. In that same vein, Adam is going to definitely want to bring in Urtai as a way to stop those bigger cards, right? We're kind of wanting to preemptively get them with our cheap cards. And then Urtai is just this huge tempo swing. We can get anything off that. And then I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a Hostile Investigator if we went high on the discard spells as something that kind of just synergistically, hey, we're going to try and run Jack out of cards. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. This is something where Adam really going to depend on how we want to mulligan, how we want to play the games. So I'm going to be curious to see how he wants to do that for game number 2 here. But I think those are all really valid options to go through. And Foreign Collects is something to keep an eye on because that creature does have reach. And so, not many things can block Terror of the Peak, but that could.
All right, and let's get right into game number 2. Looks like we've already resolved our mulligans here, and we are just going to see a Triumph pass for Yeoman, and then a tapped land for Jack pass. Just real slow fair magic. It's going to be Inti on turn 2 for Adam.
Yeah, and you might notice Adam had a hand that was full of lands there, but with Inti and lands like Takenuma, Adam's going to get more looks at things, and I think is maybe keeping this hand on the back of the ability to have it come together and execute the game plan here.
Right. Oh, and there is the namesake Slowgurk as we attack in with NT. Discard a Takenuma to hit a Takenuma off of our NT trigger.
Yep, and Slowgurk gets that counter for every time a land is put into the graveyard. So we see NT put 1 on himself, and then Slowgurk put 1 on herself.
Yeah, and I mean, the engine is coming together, but Jack is also ramping. I feel like both decks are kind of doing what they want to be doing.
Yeah, this is Jack's weakest turn right here. Turn 4 is the turn where Jack has some things he can do, but nothing as powerful as what other decks are doing on turn 4. 4 mana is typically a power spike turn in Standard. Jack has built his deck so that turn 5 mana is the power spike turn. He just gets there a turn sooner, so it's like his turn 4. So not going to see a ton of stuff happen this turn, but
Sure.
Company Cards for entering Inti is pretty huge.
Yeah, pretty huge indeed. We still have Gurk on board, but getting rid of Inti takes apart a lot of the engine.
Yeah, and that is one of the big things of this Legends deck is it can play a normal game, but it really is impressive when sort of everything gets churning.
Right, and we are going to see Bile Smasher come down, and then We're going to be attacking in with Slogurk, who is up to 2 counters.
Yeah, and Adam main phase that Takanuma to try and mill lands because every land put in the graveyard would have grown Slogurk. I think Adam actually would have been over the moon to just mill 3 lands, and it hit Jack for 3 more damage because we already had the creature we wanted. In a lot of ways, Adam got pretty unlucky on that Takanuma there, but Jack is not going to complain about it as he has got some Smuggler Surprises in hand.
Yeah, he does have a couple Smuggler Surprises, at least 1 creature. But, I mean, life total already pretty low for Jack.
Yeah, one of the awkward things here is, Jack can use Smuggler Surprise to, try and find some of the creatures and lands, but needs to not die this turn as part of it.
Yeah, no, we did see an Otawara there in Adam's hand, which pretty nice in this situation. But looks like just going to play the Aclazotz and did Adam attack? Is that what that was?
Yeah, Adam
We
was
just haven't had life totals updated yet.
Yeah, life totals are a little bit behind, but yeah, it wasn't a Relic of Legends moment. That is one of the awkward parts sometimes of this deck is your opponent's creatures are tapping in moments you're not used to it. But yeah, it looks like Adam decided instead of holding up Otawara to maybe break up a combo, I'm going to just play Aclazotz. And that makes a ton of sense because really it only stops the Gallop, right? Like we know with our caster vision that Jack does have the Inferno Gallop that could cause some real problems. But from Adam's perspective, if it's just 2 Terror that peaks again, well, that's not going to stop it. The trigger's going to already have happened. So getting Aclazotz in play is actually a great way to break this up. As we do see the Smuggler Surprise get milled over. And it looks like Cavern of Souls is going to be the take, but Jack's deciding between Tranquil Throwback or another land and goes with the Tranquil Throwback.
Yeah, and we're going to go back over to Jack's turn. Now down to 4 life.
Worth noting here that, Smuggler Surprise being an instant means that Jack can actually try to get Adam in the blocking stage of the game where, Adam tries to attack with everything. And then Jack's like, all right, I'm going to Smuggler Surprise in, some Terror of the Peak, shoot your stuff down, eat your 1 creature, pass back to is it back to me? Okay, kill you. Now, I don't know if Jack has the creatures that can actually do that in this spot, but Adam is doing a good job of keeping the pressure up, and this is what he needs to do against this Gruul ramp deck.
Yeah, I mean, being down to 4 life, very scary position to be here, especially with all the little combo ways that Adam has to just get a little bit of damage across the line there. But looks like we're going to main phase this Smuggler Surprise.
I like this from Jack because, I talked about maybe you want to get a little, cute with it, but it's a good way to actually got something like Urtai we talked about before. And it's coming in, Niall.
Yeah, we've got Calamity, we've got Tyrannix Rex. These are scary creatures.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen Calamity before, basically you can saddle it, which is a lot like crewing if you haven't seen that mechanic before. But you put it on the creature, and then when Calamity attacks, it makes 2 copies of a creature. So the Tyrannix Rex here, there's now, 13-ish damage coming across. And so Adam with his life-linking Aclazotz is going to be able to block and probably not die here since I believe Jack is tapped out. And has lethal on the crackback.
Yeah. And we are going to lose the bat there, but I think that's going to be it. Looks like we're scooping up, going to a game 3.
Yeah, Jax is down the crackback. I think he was just kind of hoping maybe Adam overthinks it and, doesn't, do math correctly, which, if you're going to die, you might as well do. If Jack held the Smuggler Surprise there, 1, might get got something like an Urtai we talked about, but 2, Adam just had enough creatures that were big enough that it was going to be kind of a problem anyways. Now, Jack maybe could have barely survived, but it might have involved losing some creatures. Looks like the players are talking about it there. But we are going to see a game number 3 here, which is very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. We will have Jack on the play for game 3. How important do you think that is in this matchup specifically?
It's huge. So remember in that last game how we talked about how Jack on 4 mana isn't going to be doing that much, right? Because we built our deck to kind of go off on turn 5. Well, when you're on the draw, that really gets compounded, right? And luckily,
Mhm.
Jack has to like glimpse the core in order to sort of even be there on curve. Now, Jack, on curve is going to play something like glimpse the core, one of those types of cards to get us ahead on mana a little bit, like maybe the Scrap Gorger. Then on our turn 3, we're going to have access to that 4 mana, so it won't be as punishing when we're sort of not using all our mana. It's also possible that since Jack's on the play, we might see some more like aggressively ramping to even bigger things, right? Like we might see Glimpse into like Glimpse plus Cycle and Armadillo or something like that in order to get another land and sort of continue to curve out. So this deck is very good and compounds play draw a lot. Now, it has the classic ramp problems. If we don't have those things, our deck's going to fall apart. And Adam's going to hope to have stuff like turn 1 Duress to really break that up.
Yeah, we are going to get straight into game 3 here. As Jack on the play is just going to play a tapped land and say go. Over to Adam.
Looks like Adam's going to join him, but has a bit of a think. It makes me wonder if there is a card like Steel and Oil in hand or Duress. And
I'm gonna play an untapped land past the turn. And it looks like Jack is glimpsing, which exactly what he wants to be doing. And back over to Yeoman, it's going to be Otawara into Rona, also exactly what he wants to be doing.
yeah, both players are having their good starts. When you're like goldfishing your deck at home, you're like, all right, I go turn 1, they don't do anything. Then I play my Glimpse, and then Adam at his house, he's like, okay, turn 1, I dodge a thing, and then I play my Rona, So both players, are in a very good spot, and we're going to get to see some exciting gameplay here. Jack needs to have something for Rona because what we haven't seen this match so far now is Rona stick on the battlefield. And when it does, it is night and day for the Slogurk deck.
Yeah, we saw game 1. Jack had the answer for Rona immediately. We see the Carnosaur in hand. And we also see an Obliterating Bolt. So it looks like Rona not going to stick around for this one either.
Yeah, Jack's in a weird spot too where we have all these Terror of the Peaks and we have this Smuggler Surprise, which can find us lands. But also if we just kind of naturally draw lands, we'll be so happy to have the Smuggler Surprise, right? Because then we get to put everything in. And it looks like Jack is just going to try to answer the Rona and hope to draw the lands naturally. And then if he, whiffs next turn, he'll just Smuggler Surprise looking for lands.
Yep, and that's going to be Relic into... Is that a Duress art?
That is a Duress, yeah. I like that Duress because it's from Cons, which is around the time I started playing, but also because it's a dragon and Jack's hand's all dragons. We love dragons here.
Right. Well, fortunately for Jack, Duress cannot hit his dragons, but unfortunately it can hit that Smuggler Surprise, which he will go ahead and lose, as he just draws naturally into the mountain, plays Terror of the Peaks. Back over to Adam.
Yeah, and that top deck mountain was huge for Jack. Now, Jack being on the play meant that he could kind of afford to miss since, Adam didn't have that pressure like we talked about, but hitting it there has put Adam in a world of first. We see Adam just has both Seiju and a Triome in hand.
Yeah, that is not the hand that he's wanting to be having, but he does have an Inti, which can help get rid of those and into something a little more useful. It looks like he might be contemplating cycling that Triome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Adam can cycle the Triome now to try and like hit more land drops and stuff, but he won't be able to cast any spells. If he waits until the next turn, he can cycle then and will have the ability to play until the end of his next turn. We're going to see Adam take a double check of Smuggler Surprise, like if Jack top decks one. Adam knows Jack's entire hand, which is also part of the problem. Adam knows this NT is going to die. You saw him, think about even playing it to begin with.
Right. Yeah, very tricky spot for him. And a very important game as well. Does not want to make a misstep here. Every decision matters so much. These players are very well, could be on their way to the Pro Tour. Just need to win a few matches.
Yep. And this is something that Adam has really wanted. When, obviously 2020 derailed a lot of people's plans. Adam was really wanting to, make a grind and go for it. And then, sort of got in the way. And Standard is his format. If you've been following Adam for a long time, he has been writing Standard articles for various websites, doing things like that for years now. This is where he kind of thrives. and this is his spot. And luckily, these players are in a spot where one loss is not going to ruin their tournament, but you don't want to use your free space, you know? Like, you don't want to use your get out of jail card early. You don't want to roll the third triple in Monopoly, another great Hasbro product. So you want to keep going as Jack is in the tank, which is terrible news for you, Adam. Here, Jack has to think about, how am I going to ruin your day?
Yeah, terrible news indeed. Looks like we're going to go to combat and swing with the Terror. Not much Adam can say about that.
And I like this line a lot from Jack, because Jack doesn't know. Adam might have a card like Go for the Throat. So making sure, you know, we get the attack in and figure out if we want to do something different is pretty big as the second Terror of the Peaks is coming down.
Yeah, and looks like second Terror targeting NT. In response, we're going to cycle that Proving Ground, just hitting a Swamp off of the NT triggered ability there. So we go back over to Adam. He can play that Swamp. Looks like an Honest Rusty and a Go for the Throat, I think.
Yeah, and that's actually really huge, because now we can pick up the NT and play the NT and have Go for the Throat available. Because not only, I mean, the Honest Rusty makes it cost one less as well, but you could have tapped it. But this is one of the problems, Niall, and this is a problem for most people today. If Jack sits across from you, not many people came prepared to kill these kind of creatures. You know, there's a lot of these 2-mana kill spells that can kill anything, but that's about all everyone has. So when there are multiple of them, it becomes a real problem.
Yeah, and with that, you know, effectively ward pay 3 life, still going down in life very quickly. You know, already down to 12 with a Terror of the Peaks that he still can't block on the board, which is going to swing in right now for another 5, take down Adam to 7.
And I think Jack's hand is double Trumpeting Carnosaur and a Smuggler Surprise. So I think Jack's trying to figure out, hey, should I kill this, you know, NT right now, or should I use my Smuggler Surprise, try to find, you know, more land drops? And if I hit something like Territorial Stomper and a land, that's just going to jettison me to the moon, you know? As we are going to see the decision to...
Yeah, and it looks like in response, Adam going to go ahead and Boseiju one of Jack's lands, which is going to give us an NT trigger, which is going to hit an Honest Rusty.
This makes total sense from Adam's perspective, because from where Adam is, he's like, oh no, I need to get my NT trigger, I need to keep going. Jack can float a mana in response, and if I was correct about that being Smuggler Surprise, we might just see it get used here to make the land drop that we're missing. Now, it looks like that isn't what was in hand. That was maybe a misstep on my part, so pardon me there, but it was almost disastrous there for Adam.
Yeah, and we're going to go back over to Adam's turn now. Now, with the Slowgurk deck, he's definitely not out of it.
Yeah, Adam has about one more turn. Adam knows he's got to fade. So many draw, like we saw in game 1, right? Like any creature kills us with the Terror of the Peaks. We're there again. And Legend ruling the Honest Rustin is kind of the beginning of the combo. We're very close to assembling it, but we need to get very lucky in a couple spots. And I think that last card in hand had to be like a Rona or a Slowgurk if we were going to get there, but we'll have to see exactly.
I think it's a Boseiju.
Yeah, I think it is Boseiju, which is good for the redraw.
Right. Yeah, we're going to get another NT trigger.
And it looks like Jack's maybe responding. He first wants to see what the NT reveals.
Yeah, another Relic, not going to do much. Not what Adam's looking for.
And this is one of the other awkward things about, you know, the 5-color Slowgurk deck is the first Relic, you know, you trade your first child for. The second one, you'd rather have a ham sandwich. You know, they don't really scale together very well.
Yeah, and I think Jack has a Calamity, has a Surprise in hand. It looks like we're going to see the Surprise get played, help us hit those land drops.
So I wasn't wrong last turn. Pog.
So we are going to see... that's just going to be a scoop from Adam, and Jack on to 10-0 from 9-0 in day 1. Still the only player here going undefeated. And the fact that we have an undefeated player is kind of amazing. And Jack really crushing it.
Yeah, Jack did great there. In case you're curious at home, Tranquil Frillback was one of the milled creatures. So that getting cast will trigger the Terror, which will do a 3. Adam knows I have nothing in hand that can stop this. I'm going to attack for 5. 5-3 is 8. I'm at 7. That's game. And speaking of game, Jack, I think, is one match win and maybe even a draw away from locking the Pro Tour. Now, we saw Jack in the interview talk about how, hey, I'm here to get the Worlds invite. I'm here to top 8. I want to get the trophy. I've never played a Pro Tour before. That's awesome. But also, how many chances do I have to be, the sole undefeated going to top 8 of a big RC like this? Jack wants the victory, and we love to see it. And he's in a great position. And look at the other top decks near him. I think a lot of the matchups that if I was playing Jack, I'd be worried about aren't nearby. I'm not seeing a ton of Toxic near him in the bracket. I'm not seeing a ton of Control, which I think is like a matchup he's like kind of afraid of, but he'd rather play than some. So if you're a Jack fan, we're in prime position to see a great run today.
Oh, absolutely. We heard him say that, he's going for those top spots. He wants the Worlds invite. And at this rate, he's going to get there. Like he's really proving that he has the right deck for the moment. And he is a very skilled pilot with it. Very excited to see where he goes from here. We're going to take a very short break, and then we are going to get back with more Magic. Stay tuned.